Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. It's episode 22 of Sunday Sermon with Ola. I really appreciate you guys rocking with me. I appreciate you guys that send me stuff during the week, like, hey, you might want to talk about this, and so on and so forth. Like, I really like the interaction. It's interesting because I picked a medium that is just me speaking out into wherever, but as you can tell by the Instagram lives and everything and the interaction that I request from you guys, I like to connect with you as well. So it's not just me speaking out there. Speaking of Instagram lives, thank you to everybody that joined in last week's Instagram live. I knew it was going to be a juicy one, and it didn't disappoint. It was a good 3.5 hours, I believe, and we got some very good opinions. We got some very good discussion out of it. Some stark realizations and some heartwarming stories. So, sorry. All in all, a fantastic live. So thank you very much to everyone who got involved, and obviously always thank you guys who are patrons, who are on my Patreon, patreon.com/, olathecomedian. Um, those of you choosing every month to give something as little as £3, just to say, look, I value your work. Here it is. Here's some money, and to not even have to think about it anymore. That's a fantastic thing. I appreciate you all. All right, let's get into this topic, because this topic is one that, you know what, to be honest, let me just say first of all, I struggled this week because what we discussed last week ended up becoming really, really important this week. If you've seen the Kevin Samuels video that's gone around and the general discussion around women and their expectations of the kind of earnings they feel like their husband should have, and so on and so forth. I just feel like we almost were ahead of our time last week, but it was still a good conversation to have then. I was considering doing like a part two because everyone sent me that Kevin Samuels video where he's basically telling a woman that her expectations are way too high. But no, before that I had something else in mind, and I'm gonna stick to that because this one also got sent to me a couple of times. I had already seen it, but it was a big talking topic. So probably with the title you've connected it now. There was a story about a restaurant owner in the US. He's a black man. He opened up a spot, and he was running some kind of brunch or something like that. And he had a DJ, and DJ was playing some tunes. And some of his customers, some black women, um, felt moved in their spirit to stand up on chairs and on tables and twerk and dance. And he asks them on a couple of occasions to please not do that, and they continue. So he goes on this, tirade or rant or however you want to describe it, basically telling everybody that, look, if this is what you want to do, this is not the spot for you. I put this spot together so that black people can have somewhere nice to be. Can you please respect yourselves? I asked the brothers to respect themselves. I'm going to ask you sisters to respect yourselves as well. That this is not the establishment for to be twerking all over the place, especially as I've asked you not to. This obviously sparks a lot of discussion. One, because I don't think anyone knows how to deal with male anger, especially black male anger. Black male anger is the most threatening. The most threatening. It's the cause of death on many occasions. So, black male anger is something that's still yet unresolved, I believe, in Western society. But it does speak to something about the the how can I put this? The fission. Now you guys are gonna make fun of me and be saying I'll be using these words. Um, let's just say the splits within our own communities. Because as soon as the video came out, I saw a lot of people saying he's well within his rights. Good on him. That's his restaurant. You guys don't have to twerk everywhere you go. And I also saw people saying, it kind of reeks of anti-blackness. It reeks of misogyny. He was talking down to those women. He could have addressed them quietly, which he did, and he released the footage of him approaching them first before sort of telling them off. Um, and also just generally that, you know, a couple of other restaurants were kind of cheeky and, striking while the fire is hot, and put out videos kind of promoting their own restaurants in a way that shows that they allow women to come and twerk. And so it was this weird place where some people are like blaming the guy and saying he shouldn't have reacted that way. He could have handled it better. And there's some people just genuinely like, nah, I'm sick and tired of, this kind of behavior. Let this guy run his establishment how he sees fit. And I would want to say up front, I am more on the side of let this guy run his establishment. I have one thing I want to say is that I have a special affinity for business owners because I am a business owner myself. And especially, he said something important. He said something about how he wanted it to be somewhere, he wanted black people to have something nice. And that speaks to something I understand in the sense that sometimes when you start a business, it's not just as simple as like this just serves, a very obvious function, like to provide food. You sometimes you start these businesses, especially ones that take some creativity, like putting together a restaurant space or a comedy show, as you can see where I come in, and you put a lot of passion and heart into it. You care. You want something more for the people coming. You want them to experience something. But that's only half of the battle. The other half is them cooperating. And that's what makes it beautiful. Every time we do Sunday service, and I've done, you guys don't understand how much I do to curate that event. But you don't need to know all of that. I do that in the shadows. But I just need you guys to come with good vibes. Just decide you're not going to stink out the room, talk, shout stuff out when you're not supposed to, or just be quiet and just be dull and whatnot. It's a gamble we all take every time we put on the show. That a room full of 100, 150, 200 people are all going to be on the same page and we're all going to experience something fantastic. But the unfortunate thing is the power is skewed in the hands of those who want to spoil and ruin. If one person decides that because of what they want, screw what everyone else wants, they have an inordinate amount of power to ruin that space. And that's why, people often have to resort to kicking that person out. You'd be surprised how much one person can ruin an event for 100 people. So this is why I'm saying to you that like I have a certain affinity for business owners who are trying to do something that they're passionate about and that they care about. And I don't think there's anything wrong in him wanting to have something nice for his people. But it does beg the question as to what is nice. That's what I want to talk about today. What's nice? Black people have often been on the receiving end of capitalism and banded together as the underdogs. But as I was kind of alluding to and talking about in one of the earlier episodes, I think maybe like episode 2 or 3, I think it was called The Ghetto. I was asking, like, do we even have a context for what it looks like when we start to succeed? Oh, wow. Sorry, guys. An alarm. Wow, you would have thought I'd be more prepared than that. I have a gig tonight, so I should probably get ready. But we don't know what it looks like when we start to do well. And what happens is when people start to do well and they change, as invariably they will, people then ask them to leave their blackness behind. Or they are told they have left their blackness behind. And so often you have to ask yourself, what's the context for being black in a situation outside of poor conditions, outside of struggle? And those who are, pulling themselves out, who are, investing, starting businesses, passing down generational wealth, they are always trying to define what it is to be black in a new space. The issue is sometimes those who haven't pulled themselves out feel the need to reclaim blackness and tell them that what they're doing isn't black, right? Or tell them that what they're doing is now anti-black. And that's what my problem is with this situation. If you know what it is to conceptualize a business and put it together, get the money together, get the physical operation together, do everything, put everything in its place, I think you'd have a little bit more respect for the wishes of the person who's done that work. And that's the thing. Too many of us, like, I think in this generation, too many people just write CEO in their Instagram bio. They don't fully understand it. Look, let me let you know, yeah. If you're doing a drop shipping business, or you got a fashion line, which is t-shirts that have been printed on, I love and respect you. I'm wearing one right now, but you have to put some respect on somebody who goes and gets a brick and mortar store and doesn't just run something online. Right? You have to respect the fact that they're paying staff. Like, there's levels to this business game. When you start filling out proper paperwork, when you start having to, like, your costs go up because you have to, meet building code standards, and you have to meet food hygiene standards, and you have to hire staff, and you have to motivate staff, and you need to deal with scheduling, and you need to deal with, annual leave, maternity leave. When you deal with that level, I think you'd have a bit more respect for the wishes of somebody who goes through all of that. Just plain respect. If this is your space and this is how you'd like us to behave, I can either adhere or leave. That's everybody's prerogative. And I think it's a dangerous space where you start to say, if I don't want twerking in my space, then it's anti-black and it's anti-woman. It's misogynistic. Because what you're inadvertently doing is defining black womanhood by shouting A and twerking. Which, if most people did, you would find that reductionist and offensive. So, what's my main point for today? I think one of the lasting legacies of all that black communities have been through is a culturally coded unruliness. This is going to be a hard one. If you've had oppression come your way, and the people who were instructing you took the moral high ground, but they were clearly in the wrong. Once you break free of that, it's very hard to ever find or give moral high ground again. So you take moral high ground for yourself, which puts very few people in a place to ever check you or correct you if maybe you are being inappropriate. This is part of what I think we discussed some of this on the accountability, the secret key episode. I said that often, because women have been through issues with the way society has treated them, it's now got to a point where no matter, even if you're giving a woman like great advice, the truth, you're showing her how she's going wrong, it's always going to be filtered through the lens of the patriarchy or mansplaining or whatever it is. And all of these pre-existing problems and issues will cloud out any kind of validity in what you have to say. And this is the problem that we find often with black people when it comes to the term respectability politics. There have been movements that have told black people that our oppression would end if only we behaved better, right? Like if you pulled your trousers up, stopped wearing hoodies, just comply with the police, don't talk so loud, go get an education. And what the anecdotes, but also the trends have shown, is that time and time again, people who play 100% by the rules, done absolutely nothing wrong, are still victimized, turned down, stereotyped, or even killed in police brutality cases. So the response to that from black people is, stop telling me to behave better so that white people can accept me. Because those who are racist are going to be racist anyway. So just let me do what I want to do. And there's a small jump in there that's not being addressed. I agree that respectability politics is dangerous because it presupposes the idea that white people are just reacting to unruly black people. And if only black people would solve their problem, there would be no problem. That's not true. That's not true. The racist white people who hate black people will hate you if you are in a suit or if you are in a hoodie. That's not what we're talking about here. My issue is, why is our behavior 100% determined by how white people respond to it? You don't even realize that, there's a good quote. I think it was Oscar Wilde. I can't remember who it was that said it. Maybe Oscar Wilde. I'll check it. I'll check the quote another time. Maybe I'll tell you guys on the live tonight, 8 p.m. That I want to be a non-conformist just like everybody else. I can't remember who said that. It's bugging me. I want to be a non-conformist just like everybody else. You don't realize that sometimes, even when you're trying to go against the grain, your behavior is still being determined by the same thing you're fighting against. And in a response to white people telling black people to behave better, we've chosen that we're going to do the opposite in so many situations because of how betrayed we feel by this, narrative. But my thing is, there are good things we should be doing anyway for ourselves. There are things that within our community we should be able to say to one another, pull each other up. But the problem is there is no system of accountability within our community, because anybody who elevates high enough to maybe say, do you know what, we're doing something differently, is quite easily torn down and told that they've separated themselves from blackness. I think sometimes a good chastising or a bit of healthy rebuke is good. If, let's say, I was moving mad, I was out on a boys trip, I was out on tour, I was moving mad and I was letting some girls get a bit too close to me. If one of my boys, one of the comedians I'm on tour with, pulls me up and goes, bro, you're moving mad right now. Look, you're not cheating, but you're definitely leaving the door open for it. What are you doing? I appreciate that way more than a friend who lets me continue down that path, watches me, fall into all kinds of sin and temptation, and then it's like, whoa, it's crazy, man. What are you going to do? I want to be like, all right, cool. You're not responsible for me, but you're clearly not my brother. Because you're not your brother's keeper. Right? So in the same way, this idea that, we can't check each other, or we can't say, look, this ain't right, without being told that essentially you're wrong for pointing it out, leaves us at a strong disadvantage. People think that accountability, being held accountable for stuff, is a form of being mean. And I guess in some ways this does refer to the video that, the Kevin Samuels video. Our version of being mean versus being loving is sometimes very warped. We think that the person who cares about us but wants to let us know that what we're doing is wrong is the one who's being mean. And the one who doesn't particularly care about you but is willing to cheer you on is the one that loves you. There are very few amongst us who really know what it is to truly build a society. Very few. And I say that because a lot of men aren't on job. A lot of men aren't on job. If we were on job, we should be the ones. We should be the architects of our own society. But that's a whole nother episode. But if you knew what it took to build a society, you would know that, yes, there needs to be the rights of the individual, but there needs to be collective consensus on some things. If you want to have a driving system in this country, you have to have a consensus on what side of the road everybody drives on, right? And every day we all submit to it. Every one of us that drives. Even if you move over, you know you have to move over back to the side you're supposed to be on because you don't want to end up in a crash. It is not for you to say, I feel like driving on the wrong side of the road, so therefore I will drive on the wrong side of the road, and everybody else just needs to change. But that's the same approach we take to all these other issues in life. Someone tries to build some consensus and say, this is a space where we don't twerk, regardless of the music that's being played. No matter how much you feel in the song, just please respect the wishes of this in this establishment. Have your food, and keep a certain level of decorum. And one person or group of people decide, no, I'm doing it my way. And that's what I mean by a culturally codified sense of unruliness. I love a rebel in the right time, but a rebel with no cause to me is one of the most frustrating things. Especially because I like to see see things being built. I like to see when collaboration happens. And unfortunately, the reason why we can't build amongst ourselves sometimes, or a lot of the time, is because we can't collaborate, because we can't find consensus. We have elevated and idolized the idea of being an individual. That was a lot of eyes. I'm quite proud of that. We've idolized the idea of being the individual so much so that we don't know how to find consensus anymore. And the thing is, the truth is the truth no matter who says it. If you don't know what the truth is, you start to look at the person who's saying it, because then you can judge and say, oh, I don't think that person, blah, blah, blah. But if you know the truth, you know that even if a murderer tells you, don't murder is still true. Like, that's still a good piece of advice, or that's still, legal advice. That's still, it's going to keep you within the bounds of the law. Don't go and kill someone. But you look at the person and say, oh, but you're a murderer. Why are you telling me not to murder? So because of that, you now go and start killing. What good has that done? Even for yourself, when you end up in jail, are you proud of yourself because you stuck it to that guy who told you not to murder? I think a lot of us have to heal inside, because there's a lot of rebellion for no good reason. Just rebellion, just for the sake of rebelling. I don't think a lot of us deal with authority very well. And you think you don't like authority, but you also want authority. And if you look at, there's a parable in the Bible where there's a man who is he's a commander he's an army commander, and he speaks to Jesus and he says, I know you have the authority to heal my daughter, I think it was, because I am a man of authority myself. When I say to a soldier, come, they come. So what he was saying is, I recognize your authority because I am a man of authority. You can't know what it's like to hold authority until you know what it's like to submit to authority. So if everything in you just wants to rebel and fight back, you're like, I don't want to be told what to do, blah, 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 blah. You can't ever hold respect. You can't ever hold authority. And you one day you want to hold it in your home. You want your kids to listen to what you have to say. You want to start a business. You want to be a boss babe. You want everybody to listen to you. You want to be the big baller. You want your wife to follow your lead. So many times we talk about how we want to hold authority, but at the same time we want to rebel against authority at every opportunity. It doesn't make any sense. You can't sow rebellion and reap authority. It does not work. Eventually, everything you built will be taken away from you by people rebelling against you. So there are some very simple principles about good behavior, respect, decency, that I guess we're not ready to face yet in a lot of subsections of our community. Because we're still hurt by what someone else did or what someone else said, we use that as an excuse to not actually fix some fundamental things. If you tell some black people, like, let's change some of your spending habits, right? They'll attack you and continue to put themselves in debt. Well done. Clap for yourself. If we question the consumerism within our community, there are people going to say, "Yeah, this is all I can get. This is all I want. You need to, the white man's always held us down." Blah blah blah. I'm not doubting that, but why is your behavior determined by that? Like, fighting materialism is important whether or not white people are respecting you for it or holding you back for it or whatever it is. Passing down generational wealth, trying to stay out of debt, all of these things, they're all good principles. But if I say it to you, you're more likely to look at me and say, "Oh, he's such a prick. He went to private school," or whatever it is, to try and discredit me so you don't have to deal with the truth. I don't understand that process in our community sometimes. It's really frustrating. And I think we have to address the aspect to which how we take twerking. Here's the thing about twerking. Twerking sits in a nice grey area, a nice convenient grey area. Because on the one hand, twerking is just dancing. But at the same time, for any girl who says, twerking is just dancing, if your man is hanging out with a female friend of his and she decides she's going to get up and twerk for him to watch, you'll see how you really feel about twerking. Now, twerking, I personally believe, has an inherent sexualized nature to it. I'm not saying because it's sexualized it's bad, by the way. I think it's perfectly healthy to display sexuality. Sometimes I like to grab my wife's bum. I think that's perfectly well within my rights to do as her husband. Sometimes I like to make what might be deemed inappropriate comments or hit on my wife, and she might blush or whatever it is. But as far as I'm concerned, that's perfectly fine. So I'm not against people displaying sexuality, but what I am against is pretending it's not sexual. So if a person now says, "I don't want sexualized dancing in my restaurant," you're going to be like, "Sexualized dancing? What do you mean it's just twerking?" But if your man is watching another girl and she's just dancing, it's like, "No, that's like sexual. Why are you watching her twerk?" And I think, sisters, sometimes you know what you're doing. You know how to play that gray area. And it's fine, because at the end of the day, I'm not the one who's going to hold you responsible. But I'm saying you're going to have to check for yourself. Am I a hypocrite? If I want to, there was one time we had a Sunday service discussion topic that was around like, if as a guy your female friend dresses quite scantily around you, and it kind of, it's an issue for you, like in the sense that it makes you uncomfortable because you get quite turned on, but you don't want to see her that way, and blah blah blah. Is it okay to ask her to not wear that around you? Now, we can discuss that topic another time in terms of. But what happened was, the first thing that came out of women's mouths was, "No, no, 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 you can't tell what women want to wear, blah, blah, blah." And then some comments that were like, "She's still not asking for it. She's still not asking." I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean? What's she not asking for? She's not asking to be raped, regardless of what she wears, blah, blah. I said, you're clearly having a previous argument you had with somebody else here. Because nobody mentioned anything to do with rape. Nobody said that the guy's going to just jump or whatever it is. But if, let's say, for example, his faith or the situation he's in, he's a married man, and he's like, "Look, sis, you're my sister. I love you as a friend, but please don't have the whole cleavage out when we're hanging out. Please, it's a struggle area for me. Could you love and respect me in that way?" And then now when we started actually discussing the real topic, we realized where the nuance was. But the problem is, there was first of all that need to rebel based on a problem that existed way before. And I think we're not hearing some of the topics that come up well because we're dealing with problems that we've already had somewhere else. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I want to hear yours. I definitely do need to wrap this up. It's a pleasure working through these topics with you. But I guess tonight I want to ask you guys, Is it wrong to pull up your community where you feel like the behavior is slack? It's weird because I think maybe it's generational as well, but there's some very conservative aspects of our culture and some very ridiculously liberal aspects of our culture. And that clash is still happening every day. And what's weird about it is that it's both sides are trying to attach their conservatism or their liberalism to their blackness, and it's clear that blackness does not determine any of it. There are black people who want to twerk. There's black people who are tired of seeing girls twerk. There are black people who want to hear rap music, and there's black people who like listen to other kinds of music. There are black people who want to eat fried chicken and waffles, and there are black people that want to eat foie gras. And then there are black people who want to eat foie gras on some days when they're in that mood, and then they want to eat chicken and waffles when they're in that mood. Like, we're way more diverse than we give ourselves credit for. So when you're trying to claim blackness or trying to stake your description of blackness, I think mostly what it reveals is more of a desire to impose your will for the sake of centering yourself. But then how do you reconcile that with seeing your community consistently consume and not produce? And then if you want to have that message economically, like, look, guys, we need to rise economically. We need to consume less and produce more. How do you have that conversation without seeming like you're just centering yourself and your views? Especially to a community who has an ingrained amount of distrust for each other. How do we have the tough conversations about our own behaviors, about the things we need to improve? How do we get our own house in order without mentioning white people? Without mentioning all the external forces? How do we deal with our own inner issues as communities, as families, as relationships between men and women? How? Help me out. Instagram Live at olathecomedian, 8 p.m. tonight. Stay blessed.